All right. So I'm back. Apologize about that. So today I'm going to be talking about how to get your dog to stay. So basically the question was how to enhance the obedience commands so that the stay is implied. Sounds like just with any obedience command, like stay at the threshold of a door or hold a sit command until you're released. So I'm going to be touching on that. Safe place, how and where to safely practice transitioning to off-leash obedience. We've got a question about a Border Collie that attacks dogs without warning, so I'm going to be talking about that and resource guarding. A Golden Doodle that tramples a 1-year-old, so I'm going to be talking about how to help stop that habit. Dog that bites when startled. And so this is stuff I'm going to be talking about today. So if you have any of these issues or similar issues or know anybody who does, then I'll be sharing some tips that you should be able to apply. Barking at every noise, even if there's a dog on the TV or like any neighborhood sounds. Getting into the trash, and one person said their dog just doesn't like new people, so just asking for general suggestions with that. So I'll start with Kim McKnight asking how to basically get the obedience commands, the implied stay, like how to get her dog to hold the command until released. So start small and move up from there. So usually the way that we start that is with whatever obedience command you're working, if that's sit or place or down or doorway thresholds. It's kind of all the same nuts and bolts. But for example, if we're teaching a sit command, first once they understand sit, you get them to sit, and typically, see if I can stay in frame here. If you have your dog sit, then they're right in front of you or right next to you, typically. So the first thing to do to kind of build up their implied stay would be to take a step away and keep your leash positioned, so if they try to walk in any direction, you can say, nope, sit, right? Just give them a little pop. So basically hold the leash like over top of them or as close to them as you can. So you're going to start by just taking a step away, and if they try to follow you or if they think, oh, that means the command's over, then you can just say, nope, sit, and get them to sit again. If you need to get closer, you can. And then you're just going to basically move up from there. So after they'll hold while you take a step, now try to walk like a half circle around them while they hold the sit, then walk back, and then walk a full circle, right? And any time that they get up, so they should be sitting the whole time. Anytime they get up, nope, sit, right? Just nope, sit. And then once you can walk a circle one way, walk a circle another way, walk to the end of your leash, and always, try and keep your hand positioned, so if they get up, you can give a very, very quick, well-timed correction, and then reaffirm the sit command, because we're still teaching this. And when they sit, good. And then once you're at the point that you can walk around, you can do this, you can kind of dance, you can do whatever that'll kind of get them excited, they might want to get up. Then you can build from there using food or toys or anything. Again, start small and build up from there. So maybe it's dropping one kibble. Standing here, the dog in front of you, you can drop one kibble. It's good to start with dropping it behind your back, so that if they try to get up and go for it, you can use your body language to nope, sit, right? You can use your spatial pressure, because just like you and I, if somebody gets in your face, you're instinctively going to go back. So dogs really respond well to that. So if Fido is sitting and you're trying to build that implied stay command, you drop a little piece of kibble, he hears it, he goes, oh, you just stepped up, nope, sit, good. And he'll probably instantly go right back into a sit as you step forward, right? Because they're gonna try and keep a bubble there. And then from there, you can drop the kibble off to the side, you can drop a handful of kibble, only moving as fast as your dog tells you to move, and you can just keep building up the distractions to the point where if you check out our YouTube page, you'll see some videos of us teaching like a sit command or a down command or a place command, like throwing food over top of their head. So like as the dog sits here, you can throw a handful of kibble right here. It'll crash down on the floor and scatter all over the place, and they'll hold the command, and then you say break, and then they go get it. So start small, build up from there, but maintain your expectation of when I ask you to sit, that means sit no matter what's going on. Build slowly until the point where it doesn't matter what's going on, your dog will hold that command. Hey, Lauren. Constant jump. I'll get to that if I have time. I got several questions. I'll write that down. Constant jump. So yeah, to basically strengthen your obedience commands and build on that implied stay, start with small distractions and build up from there. And sit is usually the easiest thing to kind of introduce a lot of these distractions, and then you can again carry this over to anything else. So once your dog can sit while you drop kibble, you bounce a tennis ball, you put a plate of fresh eggs on the ground, and your dog can sit through all these distractions, then they are more equipped to hold a down command while you do that, to hold a place command while you do that, to do a come command while those distractions are present, to not run outside the door when different distractions are present. So sit is usually the easiest way to start. Just build up from there. So Lauren's question, how and where to safely practice, and I summarized these because I had to write them down. So sorry if I'm summarizing. I think I got the pertinent details of your question. So basically, I think what you were asking was how and where to safely practice transitioning to off-leash obedience. So I would say really anywhere. You're going to start by getting to the point that you've got your 30-foot leash on. So make sure that you're taking steps to get there. You don't want to just rush to trying to do off-leash obedience stuff when you've not kind of taken the proper steps to get there. If you take 3 steps at once, you're probably going to fall back to where you were anyways. So first, start with your 6-foot leash on and only give commands when you're within that 6 feet. So you only want to give commands when you can reinforce them. And if you can't reach the leash, then you can't give guidance if, for example, you say come and Titus goes the other way. You're like, he just won that battle, right? And you've put a loss on the scale. You want to keep the scale tipped toward win. So you want to reduce as many losses as possible. And if you give a command and you don't have access to the leash as we're working at this level of training, then he has the option to make a bad choice, and you really, what are you going to do? Chase him? Then it becomes a game. So don't give any commands unless you're within that 6-foot leash. Once he is super, super consistent, and I mean like 99% of the time he's doing the command on the first shot, and if you're consistent with this, it's not going to take you long. Then you can move to a 15-foot lead, or long line, drag line, a lightweight 15-foot leash, basically. So then you can give commands at a further distance, because dogs, like kids, listen better when you're right in their face versus when you're across the playground, right? There's more distractions in between you, and they feel like they have more options to disobey. So you'll notice as you get further and further away from your dog, their tendency to test how serious you are will increase. So when you move from 6 to 15 feet, then you might find that you're reaching for that leash, or you're stepping on that leash so that they can't walk the other way. But when you're within that 15 feet radius, and you've got access to that leash, and you're giving your commands, and in your case you're working with an e-collar, so you're communicating with that at the same time, then once you're, again, super consistent with that, and anytime you ask him to do an obedience command, he's doing it, then you can move to that 30-foot long line. And at that point, you can be doing stuff inside if you've got enough space to have the 30-foot line on. You can be doing stuff outside. Again, you want to be staying within that 30 feet. Once you have got once Titus is super consistent with all of his obedience commands that you give on that within that 30-foot range, and you're not touching the leash, so that's your safety net. The 30-foot long line is your safety net. Once he is being consistent, I mean, I wouldn't put like a number or a set of repetitions on it to be counting, but basically, like, if you can go 2 weeks with that 30-foot long line on, and he's responding every time that you give him a command, I would say you're ready to start doing some stuff off leash, right? And at that point, again, I would kind of rein things in. So if you're doing stuff out at the park with the 30-foot line on, practicing your obedience, when you start doing things off leash, when you actually make that transition, and again, that's when he's being totally consistent with the safety net of the 30-foot lead or drag line, then maybe move to like your yard, so it's not quite as intense as like the park or anything like that when you first start doing stuff off leash with the remote trainer. And once he's super consistent and you've gone a week or two, at least a week or two, in a setting like your yard with the remote trainer, and he's responding every time that you ask him a command, he's doing that, and your obedience is super solid, just like it was when you had your 6-foot leash on, then you can start to explore different territories. But again, just a disclaimer, most cities, it is against city ordinance to have a dog off leash, and even if it wasn't, I wouldn't encourage you to take your dog like off leash downtown or at places like that in public, because even if your dog is totally well behaved, I mean, our dogs, if we take them out in public, they've got a leash on. Will they listen without a leash on? Yes, but I, one, don't think it's a good example to set for other dog owners, and two, there's always a scenario that could arise that you've not trained for, unless you've done super intense, extensive training, and your dog will be obedient through gunshots and car accidents and fires and all kinds of other stuff like that. Stuff I've never trained my dog through, so probably most of you haven't. So even if your dog is obedient off leash, and even if you're using a remote trainer, I personally would not encourage you to go out downtown or in public spaces and not have your dog on a leash. But it's awesome to have your dog listen off leash, because we've got 5 acres and our dogs can roam the property, and they've got that freedom, but they've earned that through their obedience. So sorry if I got long-winded on that question. Moving on. Sandy Guthrie has a Border Collie that is attacking her other dogs. I think she's got 4 other dogs without warning. And it sounds like, again, sorry, I summarized your question. You gave me more details. It sounds like there was some resource guarding over some toys, potentially. And so, like, I try to be careful how I say this, but, like, really, so I hope this doesn't come out wrong, but really, our dogs don't do anything without warning. Our dogs are always communicating to us. There's an exception to every rule. So yes, there may be times where our dog does do something very suddenly and didn't really give any good cues or anything that we picked up on. But 99% of the time, our dogs communicate primarily through body language, right? So 99% of the time, they're giving us some sort of communication that before they bite or before they snap, they're telling us, I'm uncomfortable. I don't know what to do in this situation. I'm nervous. I'm afraid. I'm just antsy. I'm overstressed. They're telling us these things in the way that they communicate. And without going in like super in depth on reading dog body language, we do have 1 or 2 other videos where we talk more about reading dog body language. So if you search our YouTube page for body language, you'll find at least 1 or 2 other videos that we go into this a little bit more. But in general, think about if the expression on your dog or the posture on your dog was on you, what would that mean? So we see our dogs do this a lot. The ears go back, or they look at us like this, or they back up, or they tense, or their shoulders go up, their head goes down, ears go back, ears go up. You know, all these things. Think about what that would look like on you. So if I kind of did this kind of thing, like, you know, you kind of, without even thinking about trying to interpret that, you have a feeling what I'm thinking or feeling. If I went like this, like, you would know that I'm a little unsure, scared, maybe nervous. If I went like this, right, like, that means I'm concerned, and I might do something about it. That's kind of a very assertive thing to do. So think about what your dog's body language would look like on a person. And more times than not, that's going to give you an accurate interpretation of kind of what they're thinking. And when you know what they're thinking, you can better anticipate what they're going to do next. So for one, like I said, I think this sounds kind of like a resource guarding issue, because it sounded like when there was a toy present, your Border Collie would attack the other dogs. So that's a resource guarding issue. I could do 2 separate videos just on resource guarding. So I'm not going to get super in depth on that, because this video will end up being an hour. But I will say I would first start trying to focus a little bit more and read your dog's body language. So I think one scenario that you might have said, even if they're just sharing the same space. So if your dog is just laying there and the other dogs come into the room, and your dog, you know, if they kind of are looking over their shoulder, like, they're telling you either I don't like what they're doing, or I'm unsure what they're doing, or they're making me uncomfortable. So an easy thing to do then is just, right? Just split that tension right in half. Take the attention off of this and bring it to you. And then, hey, you go over there and you're fine, right? If one's laying down and another one's walking up to another one, anticipate that there is tension in the air and split it, right? There's 100 ways you can do that, but without doing an hour-long video, that's an easy thing that you can try, and oftentimes that will, it'll break that tension. So yeah, I would say there's probably some resource guarding going on there. You did mention a lot of ball drive with your Border Collie. That's a whole nother can of worms. So if you want more answers specifically on resource guarding, I would say shoot us a message and I'll answer your question more in depth, or do another video specifically on that. Whitney Kirkland says her Golden Doodle tramples her 1-year-old, and so I asked, because it sounds like your Golden Doodle just gets super overexcited to the point that they're just romping all over the house, and the 1-year-old kind of just gets caught underfoot. So I asked if you mentioned something about the obedience commands were there, so I said, will your dog do the obedience commands when your 1-year-old is there? And it sounded like he or she would, but then there wasn't the implied stay, it sounds like. So if you do a sit command, they would spring back up and go back about their business. Or if they do a down command, they do a down successfully, and then they spring back up, and then they go about their business. And it sounds like the business is oftentimes trampling the little one, which is no good. So again, I would say a good thing to kind of start to help with that is, and this would be a multi-step thing, getting your dog to not trample the little one, but a big thing is going to be just practicing your obedience with your 1-year-old present. But before you get there, like I said in my answer to the first question, which was basically just building the implied stay with your obedience commands, and that can look as simple as doing a sit command, walk and being able to walk circles around your dog, being able to drop kibble without them breaking that sit command. So when they break, give them a little pop on the leash, put them back into a sit command, try again. And progressively increase the distractions from there. So when you've got your dog and your doodle is getting the implied stay, as you're building that command, when you get to this level, a distraction can be your 1-year-old running around the house. your 1-year-old running around the house with a banana in their hand. And obviously this is not going to be day 1 or day 2. You're going to build up to this, but and also start with the distance between the two. So start with your doodle just holding a sit command while your 1-year-old is running around 20 or 30 feet away. And then once your doodle, you'll be able to tell when your doodle's ready to move on, because they'll be able to do it successfully. If they're breaking every 5 or 10 seconds, or breaking that command and you're having to put them back in the command, then they're not ready to move on. When they start to seem bored with what you're doing, you're ready to increase the distractions. So a way to increase that distraction, since the primary thing, it sounds like, is the excitement while your 1-year-old is present, close that distance slowly until your doodle can hold a sit command while your 1-year-old is 5 feet away, bouncing around, running around, doing what your 1-year-old probably does naturally. That is assuming that your 1-year-old is mobile. I guess I'm jumping the gun a little bit, because our youngest was 9 months old and walking already, so she was literally running by the time she was 1. So if your 1-year-old is like 13 months and not like 18 months and walking and super mobile, then obviously they're not going to be running around, jumping around, but just being present. So if that's crawling around on the ground, start them again 20, 30 feet away if you've got that much space inside, and slowly close that gap. Just ask your dog to do a simple sit command. That's usually the easiest thing to start with. And also, if you've taught a place command and you have something that you do a place command on, that's also a great thing to do. And I would say this, especially we use this a lot with kids that are mobile, because you can have your dog do a place command, which is basically anything that's a distinguishable surface. We usually start with a raised pet cot, and place command acts kind of like an invisible cage. When you have your dog on the place command, the expectation is all you have to do is stay on this object. You can lay down, sit down, stand up, walk in circles, play with the toy, whatever. You just can't get off this object. So sometimes that's easier too for dogs than to sit in a formal position. They can stay on the place command, or the place cot, while your kids are doing their thing. So they're being exposed in close proximity to the thing that makes them super crazy. And just basically you just expose them to that until they're bored with it. And then when you release them off the place command, the excitement has diminished greatly. And this would apply to having company over, or any mealtime, whatever. If you've got a solid place command with your dog, that is a very easy and practical way to get your dog in the situation that's very challenging for them, and exposed to that until they can get bored with it. And then when they're free in that scenario, regardless if it's when you've got company over, or it's mealtime, or the kids are running around, then they are less likely to just go crazy than when all of their exposure is them going crazy. That becomes the normal thing. If every time your doodle and your kids are together, they're running and playing and jumping on each other, that's just what your doodle's going to instinctively do as soon as it's playtime. But if they've got some good place commands under their belt, where they've held that for 10, 20, 30, 40 minutes and the kids are playing, they'll end up sleeping through that, and then it becomes less and less overwhelming with excitement for them. Cool. So Shaylee Robertson, she said her dog bites when startled and has drawn blood, sounds like multiple times. She says she will snap out of nowhere, and her vet said that it could be due to just age. So basically just you've got a grumpy old dog, sounds like was the suggestion of your vet. And I would say that there may be some, and we did comment back on this, but I wanted to touch on this a little bit more. There definitely could be some merit to that. Just as our dogs age, and just as our dogs live in general, there is possibility for, as we talked about 2 weeks ago, I think, when we had Dr. Natasha on, the animal chiro, there could be some misalignment or subluxations that are causing discomfort or dysfunction in the body that can very much so contribute to reactivity and sorry, I was reading a comment that can definitely contribute to behavioral issues and reactivity. So if this is something that has happened kind of all of a sudden, or if it seems like your dog is totally cool until somebody touches them, for example, think about if you had a slipped disc or anything even remotely similar to that, and somebody came up and touched you in just the right spot, you might just kind of knee-jerk reaction, it hurts. It's uncomfortable. So if your dog has something like that going on, that can absolutely cause seemingly unprovoked aggressive behaviors or reactivity. So that is something that I would strongly suggest you start with, because before we even try and get into, and I don't think you mentioned age, so I'm not sure what old age means in this scenario. I don't know if that's like an 8-year-old dog or like a 14-year-old dog, but either way, any dog can have misalignment that's going to cause other issues. So I would suggest you seek a chiropractic vet or somebody that does animal adjustments and have them check your dog out, because if that is a factor, getting a couple adjustments could make a world of difference with that reactivity, in addition to a whole host of other things that could be going on with your dog. And again, I would reference our video with Dr. Natasha, and I did shorten that. We did an hour-long kind of interview Q&A with Dr. Natasha about animal chiropractic, and I did do a shortened version of that that's just kind of highlights and kind of some of the key points. It's 15 minutes, so a lot more easily digestible. So check that video out if you have any interest or curiosity with chiropractic for dogs. Definitely worth checking out. That can contribute to digestive issues. So if your dog's got periodic like runny stools, like that could be influenced by spinal unalignment and like all kinds of other things. And two, it could cause chronic headaches, just like it does for you and I. If we've got some issues, that can cause chronic headaches. Your dog could have chronic headaches, and that's something that they aren't going to tell you, hey, I need some aspirin, right? You don't know that they have a headache, but if they've got that swelling pain, then yeah, their fuse is going to be a lot shorter. So that can definitely contribute to that sort of behavior. So I would start with that. I would definitely start there. That would be a great starting point. Also, you did mention something about being on the furniture. And again, this is a whole other can of worms. I could do a whole other video on this. But in terms of like pack hierarchy, when dogs are allowed to be on all the furniture, if you've got a dog that has dominance issues, resource guarding issues, aggression issues, any of the above, allowing them to be on the furniture with you is probably something that I wouldn't let them do. Now I've had dogs in the past that I have let on furniture and dogs that I have not let on furniture. And I think that's totally your preference. I have no issues with dogs being on the furniture unless they have dominance, aggression, resource guarding type of issues, and then I wouldn't let them, because that's just something that communicates to them that they are higher status than they need to be led to believe. And because that can cause, like, when your dog thinks that they are the pack leader or that they need to assume that role, then you're going to see more controlling type of behaviors with trying to control the behaviors of you, your family, and your other pets. Whereas if they understand their place appropriately, that they are not the leader, that you are the leader, then they will look to you for what's appropriate and what's not appropriate, rather than trying to make judgment calls and rulings and trying to be judge, jury, and executioner for every little offense that they think has happened in the house, right? So again, this is not the be-all, end-all, but my opinion is a dog that has those kind of behaviors, I wouldn't let them in my room, on my bed, or on furniture, period. Cool, moving on. Patty Taylor, my dog barks at every noise in the neighborhood, even when there's dogs on TV. So, formula for success: effective correction, proper alternative, and praise. So to apply that to this scenario, you really need to, and I don't know your dog, I don't know really what they respond to, what they're driven by. You know that better than I do. You need to find something that'll stop them from barking. So that could be, again, 100 different things. That could be having a leash and a collar on and giving them a pop. It could be slapping your hands really loud. It could be saying no. It could be having a hand towel rolled up and saying nope and tossing that at them to get their attention diverted off barking at the person walking by. It could be, some people have a little can with pennies in it, something that's going to stop that behavior. Air can, water spritzer, whatever it is, find something that stops that behavior and reward them when they stop. Because in that scenario, that's really what you're looking for. You're just looking for them to not bark. So effective correction, whatever makes that barking stop. Proper alternative, not barking. That's really all I'm looking for right now. And praise. So reaffirm that is the behavior that you want when they stop barking. And so if they bark at dogs on the TV, you have identified a scenario that you can set up when you're prepared to address the behavior. So you're not always going to be able to control people that walk in front of your house or noises in the neighborhood, but dogs on the TV you can control. So when you are ready to address the behavior and you have identified an effective interrupter or corrector, then you can let your dog see the dog on the TV. And as soon as they do that, whatever your corrector is, nope. And they stop. Good. You can pet them on the head. You can give them a treat. You can play with them for a second. Whatever reward really gets them going and gets them excited, and whatever makes them tick, cool. Use that. And yeah, go from there. Because when you can get the dogs on the TV is probably going to be a lesser intense trigger for the barking than somebody walking outside. So I would start with that. And again, because you can control that, so you can just introduce that right when you're ready to say, use your water spritzer or your can of coins or your leash and collar, whatever it is. As soon as they start doing it, nope, you can correct it. And yeah, if you have any other questions on that or looking for suggestions on interrupters, correctors, then again, you can comment back on here or message us and we'll try and give you other ideas. Courtney Shank with Tank. Tank is getting in the trash. So, again, same formula. Effective correction, proper alternative, and praise. So, with this, we can also set this scenario up when we are ready to address it. So, dog gets into the trash can. It sounds like to an extent you have control over putting the trash can away where Tank can't get to it, but in other circumstances you don't, like it's always out. So I would say when you're ready to work on this and you have your effective corrector, again, any of the things I just listed are good things to try, then you can put the trash can in a place that's very enticing. And as soon as Tank goes for it, before he gets in it, but as soon as he shows interest in it and his mind is focused on that, correct. Again, leash pop, water spritz, clap, whatever it is. And then when he focuses his attention on you, good boy, Tank, right? That's what I want. I want you looking at me, not putting your face in the trash. Cool. Just keep doing that and be consistent about it. So consistency is going to be key. And something too is to note with like the trash can type of thing. Same thing would apply to digging in the yard. Your dogs know when you're watching. So when you have them consistently not going after the trash when you're present, the next challenge is going to be as soon as you walk away and you leave the room, they're going to be like, Mommy's gone. And they're in there, right? That's what they're going to try to do. So a really good thing to do here is if you've got a baby monitor or more than one mobile device, you can set up a camera. If you've got like 2 phones, you can Skype or do any kind of like video sharing type of thing like that, so that you can leave the room and you can still see your dog. That's what you're looking for. So any kind of camera that you can see your dog when you're away from the room. They think you're gone. You still need to be able to give an effective corrector. So that gets a little more challenging when you're away from the room. If you're using a remote trainer, and this is only if you've done training and your dog's e-collar conditioned. I am not for a second saying go out and get a remote trainer for this. This is after you've done obedience training, then you can think about using a remote trainer this way. If you have any questions on that, I'd love to talk to you, because I do not want anybody that's not working with a professional trainer going out and buying a remote trainer and using it just to correct their dog, because that's going to do more harm than good. But if you are using a remote trainer with obedience training and you're working with a professional trainer and your dog's conditioned to it, then you can use a remote trainer in this kind of situation. So effective correction, what level is appropriate for this scenario? You can leave the room and still communicate to them on their collar. If you don't have that, then you can use a long line. Again, anything that's like a noise. So if they're responsive to noise, even if you're out of sight, if they're responsive to noise, you can see them on your camera. You can use that as a corrector. I would say a good safety net for this kind of practice would be to get a long line. Get a 30, 40, 50 foot drag line. They're relatively inexpensive. Usually just long piece of nylon with a handle and a clip. Nothing fancy. And you can get like a 50-foot one, have it going all the way into the next room, and so you can still give a little tug if your dog goes to put their face in the trash can, right? So you're way away from them. They know that you're gone. You're at a distance. You can see them on your camera, and you can say nope, and they're like, what? Like, mom's not even here. What's going on? And another thing that I just thought of, if you've heard of a scat, most commonly used for cats, that's like a little air can that we just got a kitten, so we are using one of these right now for higher surfaces. So this is an air can with a head attached to it that has a sensor, and when something goes in front of it, it goes. It's pretty cool. So you can set something like this by the trash can, so that anytime your dog goes near it, it goes right, and it'll scare them. They'll be like, "What?" And then they'll associate the trash can with that crazy weird sound, and that can sometimes deter them. Works for some dogs, doesn't work for others. You'll have to test that out yourself. Let me know if you want any other suggestions on that specific question. And cool, I think my last question was Carrie Crawford. She just said, my dog doesn't like new people. So that's not a whole lot of detail for me to really dig deep, but I can give a super good clue for any dog that does not like people. Encourage your guests. So by new people, I'm assuming this probably means in your house, because if your dog doesn't like new people, they're probably not ready to be taken out into public. So I wouldn't encourage you to be doing that. If your dog's like skittish or nervous around new people, I wouldn't take them into groups of large people that they don't know. So I'm assuming that we're talking about when we have guests over at the house. So if you've got guests over at the house, your dog does not like new people, but your dog is comfortable enough to be outside their crate and roaming, then encourage your guests to not give your dog the slightest bit of attention. Because imagine if you had stage fright, stage phobia, and you were just thrown up on stage. The spotlight's on you. You have instant anxiety, right? There's 2,000 people out in the crowd. You're like, you're just nervous. You're not happy. You're like, just bad things going through your head. You can't talk. You can't breathe. You're getting hot and sweaty. Like if you have a dog that's nervous around new people, then typically what people do when they come into the house and there's a dog is they just focus their attention on the dog. They want to talk to your dog, they want to look at your dog, they want to smile at your dog, they want to try and play and reach for him, and your dog's like, no, that's just spotlighting your dog. You're like, I'm nervous, this is not good for me, I don't know what to do, I don't know about this person, we've never met before, I don't know why they're trying to touch me. You know, if your dog is nervous around that, then encourage your guests to not give them any attention. So even if they're on stage and you've got people in the crowd, it's like the whole crowd's looking the other way, right? So you can be on stage and it's not a super anxiety-inducing scenario. So that once you've spent some time up there and you're a little bit more comfortable, then if people turn around, it's not so bad. So that may or may not make sense. Sorry, that was kind of a crazy analogy. But, and I would say too, because your dog's going to be more prone to try and almost elicit attention from your guests if they're not paying any attention to your dog. So what I mean by that is if your guests come in and they don't look down at your dog, they're not facing your dog, they're not reaching to your dog, they're not doing anything, and your dog doesn't feel threatened by them at all, the dog doesn't feel nervous by the extra people, then your dog's going to be more likely to come over and actually ask for attention. They might come over and sniff, they might come over and nudge, they might just come over and sit a little bit closer. They're like, this person's non-threatening, I'm actually kind of curious about this. I would encourage your guests to still not engage. So even if your dog comes over and sniffs them, if they go and they, boom, look at them and they reach toward them and they put their hand out, then that could be the thing that instantly makes your dog shy away. Like, oh, I wasn't ready for this, I don't know why I did this was a mistake, right? They could just go into that kind of panic state, or just lose their confidence. That could really lessen their confidence when they're taking the first step to engaging that person. So if your dog does not like new people, when you have new people over, ask them to not engage in the slightest bit with your dog. And your dog will become more comfortable and confident faster and might actually ask for attention. And after having several occasions where you have visitors, then I'm talking 3, 5, 7 occasions, if your company doesn't give them any attention, I would almost assure you that your dog's level of anxiety and nervousness when you have guests is going to be cut in half or better. And the more you do that, the less insecure they will feel when you have guests. So no look, no talk, no touch. That's what you want to do. And then, we had one comment again from Lauren about constant jumping. So again, what's an effective corrector for that? If it's constant jumping when somebody's coming into the door, you can predict that, you can set that up, you can focus on that. I know that you have a prong collar and an e-collar, so put those to use. That would be a fantastic time to whatever is most effective for that. Whatever, you can either use a prong, and this is just general, if anybody out there who's got a prong or a remote trainer, whatever kind of training collar you're using, or any corrector like we've talked about already in this video, when your dog jumps, as soon as they do that, nope, correct. Proper alternative is just being all fours on the ground. When your dog has all fours on the ground, give them attention. Don't give your dog any positive attention, any attention at all, really, when they're jumping on you. If your dog is jumping on you and you're saying, oh, stop jumping on me, buddy, and you're petting them on their head and you're touching them, even if you're pushing them off, your palms are like liquid love, right? Your dogs love being touched by your hands. So even if you're pushing them off, your dog is basically getting rewarded for jumping on you. So don't use your hands. If whatever tool you're using, this is a good 2-person exercise. So usually coming in the front door is the most enticing scenario for dogs to jump. So have somebody come through the door and you or someone else be prepared to correct for the jumping. Leash, remote trainer, prong collar, spritz bottle, whatever it is that's working for your dog. Sorry, I heard barking. And I don't know why that threw me off. Like, I don't hear barking all day long. So yeah, whatever it is that's effective for your dog, use that as soon as they jump. And make sure that, just, nope, not giving you any attention. I'm not going to touch you. I'm not going to love you. I'm not going to pet you. I'm not going to look at you. Nothing. And just be consistent about that. Because one thing that I see oftentimes is a family that has a dog that jumps a lot, and one or two people do good with that their response is appropriate. They correct the dog, they don't encourage it, they don't touch them or love them. But then there's a couple people in the family, like maybe it's the kids or teenagers, or one of the, either the husband or wife, like there's one or two people who inadvertently and not realizing it, they encourage the jumping, because every time their dog does that, they're touching them. And their dog loves being touched, so they're essentially getting rewarded. Yes. You do have the remote trainer. So perfect, Courtney. That's what I thought. I wasn't positive if you had the remote trainer. So yes, anytime Tank goes for the trash can, use your momentary and whatever. I don't know what level he's working on, but I would say, like, if his normal working level is like a 5 for the trash can, I would go up to like a 20 and just start there. And just use momentary. Don't use constant. So as soon as he, and I would say, as soon as he's advancing toward the trash can. So that doesn't mean he can't get within 20 feet of the trash can, but when he's walking with intent, and and you don't even have to say anything for that kind of scenario, because it's something that's never allowed. It's never appropriate. It's not something that I would say you need to say enough, because it's not like play that went from appropriate to too crazy, or that just needs to stop because it's been too much, in which case I would say enough. This is something that you don't ever want him to do, regardless if you're there or whatever. So just use the ecollar, use a momentary, and if that stops him, then perfect. If it doesn't, then dial up a little bit, because it wasn't enough to get his attention, and give a momentary stim again. Yeah, and whatever. And honestly, like, don't focus too much on what level you're at. Just use your dial and watch Tank. He's going to tell you what's appropriate, because in different scenarios with things that are more or less enticing or exciting to him, he'll need a different volume. So just like if I was standing next to you right now and I touched you on the shoulder, you would feel that. I would probably get your attention right away. You'd turn to see what I wanted, right? So when there's nothing going on with Tank and you're sitting in the living room, probably a very low level will get his attention and will get him to respond exactly how you want to. On the flip side, if you and I were standing shoulder to shoulder at an AC/DC concert and somebody came up and touched your shoulder, you may not feel that. They may have to go like this, hey, can you hear me? And you're like, oh, what's going on? Like, you're going to need a different volume, a different level on the remote trainer to get his attention, because his nose is going nuts for that trash can. He's tasted stuff in that trash can before, so he's already tasting it in his mind. So his the volume that you're going to need to talk to him is going to be a little bit louder than when you're just in the living room and you want him to sit or do a down command or hold a place, whatever it is. So don't be afraid to go up. You're just looking at his response. That's all we're looking for here. So whatever level that is, that could be a 10, it could be a 50, it could be a 70. Some dogs go from inside to outside. Their level on the remote trainer goes from a 5 to a 70, and their response is exactly the same. But they're in a different setting with different distractions and sensory things that it just takes a different type of tap on the shoulder to get their attention. So let me know how that works. That's honestly the easiest way to address that is the remote trainer. And since I know you did training with us, he's been conditioned, he's been trained, so this is very appropriate for him. And again, set up the camera, because once he gets to the point where he doesn't even look at the trash when you're there, he's going to know when mom leaves. So set up the camera, leave the room, same thing. As soon as he gets close to it, he starts advancing to it. Nope. And once you get some reps with this in, he's going to stop paying the trash can any mind. And I can tell you this for certain, If you're consistent with it, he will not mess with that trash can. Again, I don't know exactly what the scenario is. If he's like being left out when you're gone, then I would say you've got to cover that trash can up because it's a problem. Like I could leave my trash can out at home and my dogs wouldn't mess with it, but they've had years of not being able to get into the trash. So they don't even test it anymore. If Tank's gotten into it several times, then yeah, you're gonna want to make sure that if you can't supervise in any way, shape, or form, that he cannot access that trash can. And like our dogs aren't even allowed in our kitchen. So we have an invisible line that runs from, honestly, you can't really see it too well, but from this corner to that corner. So there's no divider on the floor, but our dogs know that they're not allowed to cross that threshold. So we just avoid the issue of them trying to eat the kids' food off the floor after breakfast or get into the trash if we're cooking and we've got that out. So that's something with, just establishing that boundary. That's a whole nother video. I shouldn't have even brought that up because now you're probably like, how do I do that? And I'm like, I don't have time to go over that because I've probably already gone way too long. I don't know how long this video is. It's probably been like... It's been like an hour. Oh my goodness. I have to get off of here, guys. Nobody wants to be on here for an hour. Well, I hope I answered everybody's questions. If there's anything that's not clear or that you have any follow-up questions with, you can comment back. You can email us. And if it's a topic that I think is real juicy, I might do a whole video on that. All right. See you guys next time.